Seems like every news cycle over the past few days has had another piece of information, Chris, about the coronavirus. And the most significant piece, and a piece of bad news, came from the NFL Players Association over the weekend. Dr. Tom Mayer issued an advisory to all players. Please be advised that it is our consensus medical opinion that in light of the increase in COVID-19 cases in certain states, that no players should be engaged in practicing together in private workouts. Our goal is to have all players and your families as healthy as possible in the coming months. We are working on the best mitigation procedures at team facilities for both training camps and the upcoming season, and believe it is in the best interest of all players that we advise against any voluntary joint practices before training camp commences. I mean, this comes at a time when Kyler Murray was supposed to be getting 20 guys together with him in Dallas. No word on whether or not that continues, but a strong message to all players, Chris, to be careful about getting together for these workouts because the virus is out there. And as these players get together and have workouts, we've seen it with the Buccaneers, we've seen it with the 49ers, guys are testing positive.
Yeah, well, I mean, no crap, they're testing positive. This is what's going to happen. You know, goes back to my, what I've been saying, and I know you've been backing me up here, but this is 6 weeks of, I'm becoming less and less optimistic about football unless we all wrap our heads around it in the NFL, especially I'm talking about, that you're going to get this year. And that's going to be the price to doing business. And I don't sit here feeling proud to say that, but two things, Mike. First off, if I'm a quarterback of a team and it's June 21st right now, and I just don't care. I'm going out to throw footballs with other guys on my teams. I don't care NFLPA if you send a nice letter out or the NFL. I'm worried about my craft and where I'm going to be at. Am I still going to try to make sure the guys I'm throwing with and myself are being, strict with rules and listening to the CDC and not doing stupid things? Certainly, I would try to be respectful of all those things. Not going to see anybody that I would feel that is susceptible, to being in real danger if they did get COVID-19. I would be sensitive to all of that. But I would not be practicing football with other guys on my team right now. And I echo it again. I just don't know how it's going to happen this year. I don't know. I mean, to me, it's like, hey, we're going to get it. So are we going to get it and then just quit the league and stop for the year? Or are we going to get it and we're going to push forward and go, of course we're getting it. It's going rampant around our country right now. And let's just try to deal with it the best way possible. I don't want to be insensitive that way. I know that's the way I would think of them a player. And please, Mike, tell me if I am being insensitive.
Well, no, you're not being insensitive. You're being pragmatic about the way young men in their early 20s, late 20s will be thinking because they want to play football. And I think they recognize their physical risks for immediate serious injury are far greater than whatever may happen to them if they would end up getting the coronavirus. And the reality is most of these guys don't have to worry about it. I had a long talk with somebody who knows what's going on as far as the league is concerned over the weekend. The only category of player that they are really concerned about when it comes to a potentially very negative outcome is somebody who's had chemotherapy within the last year or two. Now, James Conner, it's been several years. The Steelers running back is one guy that comes to mind. There aren't a lot of players in the NFL who fall into that category. For some coaches, especially older coaches who may have diabetes, coaches who may have had cancer in the past, that becomes a problem, and they may just have to give some coaches the option of taking the year off, which is on the table. But where the good news comes from, I'm told the NFL continues to be highly optimistic the season is going forward. And even as we get the dribs and drabs of 23 Clemson players testing positive, 30 LSU players testing positive, the belief is that what's happening there, a couple of things. First of all, some of these schools aren't going to have the same procedures that the NFL is going to have. And second of all, the belief is these infections, these mini outbreaks are happening in the weight room. And think about it. Heavy air, guys who are exhaling droplets into that heavy air, and it's hot and
right.
Pressed in there. You got to be very careful how many guys are in the weight room because that is the kind of place where the transmission can happen. The thinking is, on the field, it's less likely to be a problem because you don't get that same concentration of the infected droplets in a confined space where it can get into your nose and get into your eyes. So there is a high degree of optimism that they're going to be able to work this out. And when we look at the teams, it's just a handful of guys per team of the handful of teams that have had positives. At the college level, it's these outbreaks, and the thinking is they're weightlifting, they're in the weight room, and that's how it's spreading. And also, it's college kids acting like college kids away from their workouts. Professional athletes, for the most part, are going to be counted upon to be more responsible about avoiding the virus. So there is good news there, and there is cause. Now, look, they're not optimistic, or at least not as optimistic as they were a month and a half ago, that there will be fans in the stands. There was optimism in early May that would work out. But they are optimistic they're going to get their games in, Chris, and there's too much money riding on it for them not to figure out a way to do it.
I would think so. I hear that, and yeah, I still think the college football kids have a lot more problems in college football and COVID-19 as compared to the NFL. No doubt about it. You're right. In college, first off, you're always with your teammates and, you're going to the cafeteria to eat. It's more of a group team effort type thing. We just watched some of the Raiders and Derek Carr there with their personal workout on TV and all those things. Hey, in the NFL, guys hang out to each other, but it's not like in mass groups. Like the quarterback might go have lunch right after that with one or two receivers. And then, a few DBs go somewhere else and do their thing. College, yeah, you're more apt to like congregate as a full team or a full unit, and it can be passed on. But Mike, I ask you this, still, nonetheless, you're right about the weight room thing. Okay, all of that. It's still the first time they do a short yardage drill in NFL training camp, things are going to change when it's the first 4th and goal or 3rd and goal from the 1 yard line. And we're going to do it live and we're going to get in a scrum of bodies. And we're going to run it up the middle. Okay, that's going to be an issue. If someone's sick there, I'm sorry, everybody else is going to get sick too. But Mike, are we going to get to a point where, and I haven't paid attention to the Premier League as much just to know what's going on there and are people safe and healthy. But do you think we get to a point here where they're just going to ask players to go sign a waiver? Are you okay with getting COVID-19 and being around others that might have it? And we'll do the proper things to keep everybody safe when that's going around our locker room or what it is, or not? Do you think that could happen in the NFL with the NFLPA and all that?
Well, I think the waiver is going to be signed for NFL players, and what it's going to be is the collective waiver that is signed on behalf of all players by the NFL Players Association. And I think there will be an allowance in there. If there are players who do not want to play because of the virus, and Devin McCourty, the Patriots defensive back, said on his podcast last night that there are guys who are nervous. There are guys who are concerned. And you know what? With that many guys, 53 on the active roster for 32 teams, there's a chance you're going to have guys who say, I'm just taking this year off. And I think part of the negotiation with the NFLPA will be to come to the conclusion that whoever chooses to show up understands the risks and assumes the risks, and whoever doesn't, it's not like he's going to be fined. It's not like he's going to have some major financial penalty where he has to pay back bonus money. Now, he's probably not going to get paid for this season, but I think that option will be there for players and for coaches who just feel like they're not comfortable doing it. And maybe for both players and coaches, there will be other avenues for compensating them during what will be a season of no money at all if they choose not to play. So that's how it's going to be handled. It's not going to be individual waivers. It's going to be the NFLPA saying, these are the rules, and if there are guys who choose as the product of conscientious thought and deliberation to not do it, they're not going to be treated like a Jamal Adams if he decides just to not show up for training camp because he wants more money. And look, will that allow some guys who simply want more money to say, I'm choosing not to play because of the virus? I guess, but that's unavoidable.
Yeah, you're right. That is unavoidable. And, first off, I don't ever think that's a great formula for any football player is to take the year off. I mean, especially to use COVID-19 as an excuse because you're not being paid what you want. Yeah, you might be okay and safe and all those things, but you're still not practicing your craft, and you're losing a year of prime of your career too.
Right. I mean, you're right. No one's going to want to do it. Now, maybe there'll be a handful of guys, but the idea that someone would use the ability to get a year off because of the virus as some sort of contractual leverage, that would be no different than, when we were talking about teams possibly hacking Zoom conference calls in advance of the draft and trying to invade. You're taking advantage of a serious public health situation, and anyone who would do that deserves to be called out for it.
Yeah, no, you're right. And, I think the other thing that jumps out to me more than anything, and it's the proper approach, you can't, in a year like this, force players to play. I think that's the proper thing, too, to do as well. Give them some wiggle room. There are going to be some players who might have family health histories or something about their health history that, we don't know about. We don't know about some of these things these guys are dealing with, where they just don't feel comfortable. That makes them more susceptible to get COVID-19 or whatever it may be. Yeah, I think that's a smart move. I wish we were a little farther down the road. Am I wrong to think that it's June 20th and I haven't heard a player vote or a conversation enough between the NFLPA and the NFL quite yet about this type of stuff?
Well, we are getting closer and closer to the start of training camp, 5 weeks or so away, and that was the point I made last week. There isn't a lot out there that we can cling to make me feel like they're going to get this worked out. We're going to have up to 90 guys showing up for training camp, although, as I said last week, some teams are going to go possibly with 75 or 80 just to reduce the size of the number of guys they have to contend with. But at some point, you got to make a deal with the union. But the thing is, the union's got every incentive to do a deal because, on one hand, you potentially are going to lose a lot of money if you miss games or don't have a season. On the other hand, the players all want to play. So the rank and file will be constantly texting and calling DeMaurice Smith and other members of union leadership saying, work this out, work this out. We don't want to be like baseball. We want to play football. Let's work this out. And I think they eventually will. The question is, when will they do it? And the clock definitely is ticking, Chris.
Yeah, well, I know right now the clock's ticking, and just the way it looks to me right now, I don't feel good about training camp for the season starting on time. To me, it feels like it's going to get off to a late start here. That we're gonna have some details not ironed out, and yeah, we're gonna get to mid-July, and we're gonna, you know what? They're gonna move training camp back a week or two. I don't know that. That's just what it looks like to me. Again, the NFL's gonna have to talk to the coaches, which is not a union either, to where they're going to have to get figured out where they feel about this situation. I'm sure they're going to have some sort of vote or, at least conversation about how comfortable they are going forward as well.
And Chris, I'll say this. There's a disconnect between what's going on behind the scenes and what we know about. And
it seems like,
on a very important point. From our perspective, we're like, what the hell's going on? They need to find a way to get the message out that things are moving in the right direction. You don't want to create false hope, but you don't want people to hear all these different news items and string them together and say, holy crap, we're not going to have football this year.
Well, you're right. And I think coaches, even in the NFL right now, are saying the same thing. They haven't even gotten the message of what's going on. Yeah. And they feel, we saw Sean McVay last week make a few comments how the hell is this supposed to work? I mean, hey, if Sean McVay's not being told what the hell's going on, then we know there's a lot of people in dark in the NFL.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.